we have, the person is dead here.
Okay, get me the address, please.
Okay, I'm working on it.
Concentrate on that.
And the people are just distraught.
I understand that they are distraught, but...
I'm working on it. Paisley Park. We're at Paisley Park.
You're at Paisley Park? Okay, that's in Chanhassen. Are you with the person who's...
Yes. It's Prince.
And CNN has now confirmed that the artist Prince is dead.
He was found in his elevator, unresponsive, in his compound, Paisley Park in Minneapolis.
The number of songs, 7-time Grammy winner, 30 nominations, the number of songs that have touched people's lives throughout his entire career. This is going to be very, very hard news to take.
In recent times, music lovers have been confounded with the tragic and shocking news that some of their most beloved stars had passed away in controversial circumstances. The music world has again been stunned by the sudden and tragic news that Prince, the legendary musician, died at his home in Minneapolis at the age of just 57.
He was supposed to live till he was in his 90s, you know, doing concerts and joy. I mean, he just is all about joy, and he brings so much joy to so many people. He loved to connect with you through the music. I mean, the Prince fans, all of the Prince fans, they know what I'm talking about. Everybody feels like they have. If you are a Prince fan, you feel like he has spoken to you.
He's known worldwide, but he is a Minnesotan, and we're all from Minnesota, and when you lose one of our own, just like Kirby Puckett, you got to show up and show respect. He put everything he had into the music, everything. I mean, he lived at his studio, so, I mean, he just put everything that he had into it, and he took stories from people's lives, from his own experiences in life, and put it into his music, and I think that's why the world just related to him, not so much as just a black artist, but as an artist in general. I mean, he had one of the, this is the most, you see all these people together, and they are all united together to come pay their respects. I think the world's gonna take a break from all the stuff that's been going on and just remember somebody that deserves it and has been there for everybody. I mean, he did a lot of children's events, a lot of, disability events, and, he just put everything back into the community. He used to just pop up at the Chanhassen Theater, and he would pop up at the McDonald's. He loved McDonald's. So I think just a little break for everybody, for all the hate that's out there right now, to just reflect on this time.
They responded to Paisley Park to look for him and found him unresponsive in the elevator. We have no reason to believe at this point that this was a suicide. But again, this is early on in this investigation, and it's continuing to, we'll continue to investigate.
We received a call at 10:12 yesterday morning to come and assist the Carver County Sheriff's Office in this investigation. Our chief medical examiner arrived on the scene at 11:30 yesterday morning, local time, and was on the scene for several hours. The autopsy this morning began at 9 a.m. Central Daylight Time and concluded at 1 p.m. And just shortly I received word that his body did leave Midwest Medical Examiner's office and was released to the family.
Just days before his death, Prince's private jet made an emergency landing in Illinois due to him suddenly becoming ill. An audio recording of the pilot requesting an emergency landing reports an unresponsive passenger.
What's the nature of the emergency? What's the nature of the... An unresponsive passenger. Was it a male or female passenger? A male passenger.
The musician was transported to hospital, where he was given a so-called save shot of Narcan, an antidote often used in suspected drug overdoses. It was reported that doctors urged Prince to stay in hospital for at least 24 hours, but Prince checked himself out after just 3 hours. Authorities confirmed that the star was last seen alive at 8 p.m. on Wednesday night, an hour after he was pictured at a pharmacy near his home.
In addition to all of the reports about Prince's clean living, his veganism, his Jehovah's Witness beliefs, there are also a wide array of reports about his opiate addiction, about his love of pills, and some of the less kind of clean living things that may have happened towards the end of his life and in fact contributed to his death.
Dr. D, who claims to be Prince is a drug dealer, and again, we don't know whether this is the case or not, said that he never met anybody who suffered as much stage fright as Prince. And this ties in to the narcissism that was at the heart of his personality. The man who, on the one hand, has to be bigger, greater, and grander than the rest, carries that private vulnerability, that naked, raw insecurity, which is part of the drive that makes him perform. The man who, on the one hand, is too frightened to go on stage, yet when he's on stage, he's too obsessive, too driven to come off it. That combination is toxic as well as responsible for the work of so many great artists. And perhaps that's what artists like Prince, that's the price they pay for the creativity. It's the Faustian pact, if you want, that they make. Give me my creativity, give me my art, and I will give you my life.
On June 3, 2016, it was confirmed that Prince's death was a result of an accidental overdose of the painkiller fentanyl. The report from the Midwest Medical Examiner's Office in Minnesota came more than a month after the singer was found dead in a lift at his home. According to the autopsy report, Prince self-administered fentanyl, an opioid many times more powerful than heroin. In the weeks following his death, investigators had been looking into whether Prince had a prescription drug problem. This surprised Prince's close friends and family, who stated that Prince avoided alcohol and drugs and maintained a healthy lifestyle. However, Prince's team had been organizing treatment with a California addiction doctor to help him kick an addiction to painkillers. According to a search warrant obtained by news agencies, the day before Prince's death, a local doctor treated him for fatigue and anemia, stemming from apparent opioid withdrawal. For weeks, the world media speculated about the cause of Prince's death. Now that we know the truth, Prince's musical legacy can live on without being shrouded in the mystery of his sudden passing. Prince was one of the most naturally gifted artists of all time and also one of the most mysterious.
This man is one of the most committed artists I've ever known. By that I mean committed to music, utterly. And he was able to do almost everything.
In the 80s, at a time when other megastars such as Michael Jackson, Bruce Springsteen, and Madonna were delivering an album every 3 years or so, Prince remained prolific to an almost inhuman degree.
To say that he was prolific would be an understatement. His genius was unrestrained, it was unstoppable.
He wrote his first song when he was, I think, 7 years old, and he went on to sell over 100 million albums, 100 million albums. He became one of the most iconic artists of all time. He contributed to fashion, he contributed to film, he contributed to music. But the one constant in his life that sustained him and sustained his creativity was his work ethic.
A byproduct of his inexhaustible output was Prince's tendency toward wayward, self-indulgent career moves that sometimes alienated even his most ardent supporters. His influence is unparalleled, and his legacy will live on through his inspirational music.
One of Prince's greatest talents as an artist was to connect, to engage, to compel. People couldn't look away from his music.
In this fascinating documentary, we take an in-depth look into the life and times of one of music's greatest performers, Prince.
In a 1999 BET Tonight interview, Prince, famously said that that he got into music and he got into doing what he does because he loved playing, you know, jumping off pianos, as he says in the interview.
You still like going out doing dates?
Oh man, that's my life. I got into the music business because I loved playing so much. You don't really get into the business to be a star, at least I didn't. I didn't get into to make a whole bunch of money or anything like that and meet a whole bunch of women. Just so happens those are the things that came along with it. But I was always playing a lot, and it's what it's all about, jumping off pianos.
It's all about jumping off pianos and hurting your foot when you jump.
The sense you get from him is that, and these are his words, you know, the art came first, the money and the women came after. And that, again, keys into a number of things, not least of which was his work ethic. The world is full of people who want the world, and they want it now. They want the money, they want the women, they want the sex, they want the fame, they want the adoration. But they don't put the time or the effort, and they don't have the kind of intense passion for their art that Prince did. And it's that line that separates genius, if you want, those who go on to become artists of the caliber of Prince, and there's not many of them around. Prince, you know, is in a very small, thin group of the most iconic figures of 20th and 21st century art.
Prince arrived on the scene in the late 70s, and it didn't take long for him to upend the music world with his startling music and arresting demeanor. He rewrote the rulebook, forging a synthesis of black funk and white rock that served as a blueprint for cutting-edge music in the 80s. Prince made dance music that rocked and rock music that had a bristling, funky backbone.
One of the things that Prince will always be remembered for is the way that he could change genre of music absolutely fluently, whether it was pop or rock or funk or R&B. And he didn't just do it album to album. He would change completely the style of music from song to song on an album. So what was so revolutionary about this man is that he was completely fluent across a wide range of styles of music, and he loved to fuse them together in different ways and experiment in a way that no one really did to that degree before or since.
From the beginning, Prince and his music were androgynous, sexy, and provocative. His colorful image and revolutionary music made Prince a figure comparable in paradigm-shifting impact to Little Richard, James Brown, and Jimi Hendrix. Not only did he release a series of groundbreaking albums, he toured frequently, produced albums, and wrote songs for many other artists, and recorded hundreds of songs that still lie unreleased in his vaults. With each album he released, Prince showed remarkable stylistic growth and musical diversity, constantly experimenting with different sounds, textures, and genres. Occasionally, his music was inconsistent, in part because of his eclecticism, but his experiments frequently succeeded. No other contemporary artist blended so many diverse styles into a cohesive whole. Purple Rain, Around the World in a Day, Batman, and Diamonds and Pearls have sold more than 2 million copies apiece. Purple Rain alone sold 13 million copies and topped the album charts for nearly half a year at the height of Prince's reign in the mid-80s.
When you think about Prince, you really kind of imagine what you see in the video for Purple Rain. First of all, he's in purple, he's on stage, he's performing, he's a superstar, and he's putting out this very sexy, powerful stage presence. Despite the fact that he's not a very big guy, he has a very big presence, and when he's on stage, he looks like a very large individual. And I think what you see in Purple Rain is kind of scenes from the film, the very famous film, of course, called Purple Rain, kind of weaved throughout the video. The story here is about a performer, a guy that fronts a band, who gets up on stage and sings, who has a very complicated personal life. It's dark, it's not exactly a happy song, but there's a lot of overtures of this kind of gothic romanticism that we see from Prince throughout his career. I think Purple Rain is an incredible song. It's an anthem of sorts. And, you know, there's a lot of apocryphal imagery. Prince was asked about it many times, and he did have a real fascination at the time about the apocalypse and the end of the world. And Purple Rain is really about when the sky turned red and blue and rained purple, and it's the end of the world, and it's being with the person you love and your God at that time. That's what Prince is basically alluded to later in life.
As Rolling Stone contended in 1989, perhaps more than any other artist, Prince called the tune for pop music in the 80s, imprinting his Minneapolis sound on an entire generation of musicians, both black and white. The product of a broken home, Prince found refuge in music.
I was leaving school, and I looked down, and I seen this guy go in front of me. And he was a shorter type guy, I didn't know. Then down the line, I figured out, and we used to call him Skipper. That was the only name I knew him by until after he made his album. The one time I really noticed was that when I would always see Prince playing the keyboard, right? And I thought he was a keyboardist, right? Then all of a sudden, he got off the keyboard and sat on the side of the stage and started playing Carlos Santana. And that's the first time I ever heard him play the guitar, and it was masterful.
By his early teens, he'd mastered multiple instruments and was fronting his first band, Grand Central. A demo tape by the young prodigy resulted in major label interest, and an 18-year-old Prince signed to Warner Brothers, insisting on the right to self-produce his music.
He was brought to the attention of Warner Brothers Records by a local Warner Brothers representative who said that we have this fantastic kid in Minnesota and you've really got to hear him. And they signed him up. And they said, and we think he's so good, we're going to have him work with Maurice White. They recommended that he work with Maurice White, the recently deceased eminence of Earth, Wind and Fire. Now, in the late 1970s, you couldn't get a hotter producer than Maurice White, unless it was Barry Gibb. It was a complete surprise that Prince said, no, I'm going to do myself. And he did all the instruments himself. So even from the ages of 17 and 18, he was completely determined to be in charge of his own career.
Prince released his first album, For You, in April 1978 to minimal fanfare. Soft and Wet introduced his erotic approach, while I Wanna Be Your Lover and Why You Wanna Treat Me So Bad from subsequent albums, Prince suggested his musical range and significantly upped his profile. Interest in the youthful star was further kindled by Dirty Mind, a provocative and sinuously funky album that appeared like a directional marker at the start of the 80s. The jittery, new wave-ish When You Were Mine became a club hit, yet Dirty Mind largely proved too hot to handle for the radio.
The Dirty Mind album was quite unfit for radio airplay, for princely reasons you can imagine. Although When You Were Mine was a great song, which has become a standard of sorts recorded by various artists, including Cyndi Lauper. And we really didn't know if he was going to put it back on the rails until Controversy came out. Now, at this point, this was 4 albums in 4 years, and this was the pace at which he was going to continue throughout the 1980s.
Prince's breakthrough was 1999, a self-produced double album made at his home studio. He'd toned down, if not entirely tamed, the hardcore sexuality, and the longish, danceable tracks appealed to disco and the new wave fans alike. Whereas many saw divisions in culture, in terms of everything from musical preferences to skin color, Prince formed a party-minded unity around the various audiences' shared interests in dance, music, sex, and romance. Those were the priorities outlined in DMSR, one of 1999's key tracks. The album launched 3 major singles: Little Red Corvette, Delirious, and 1999.
1999 may be called 1999, but this is a quintessential 1980s music video. Everybody has big hair, everybody seems to have a perm. You've got a lot of the kind of one-handed gloves and the hat and the asymmetric hairstyle and all the other things that you associate with 1980s. It has the feel of a 1980s song and has very much the look of a 1980s song. You see Prince on stage with his band performing. And this is all about highlighting his concert presence, his stage presence, and showing that he knows how to have a good time.
Say,
He was very much a trailblazer in so many respects. His video for Little Red Corvette, for instance, that, you know, along with Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, paved the way for black artists to be represented on MTV. Where he could innovate, he would always just want to push the boundaries. And that's the sign of a great artist.
One of the defining releases of the 80s, along with Michael Jackson's Thriller and Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA, 1984's Purple Rain elevated Prince from cult hero to superstar. The movie, loosely based on his life story, was set in Minneapolis and his real-life hangout, the First Avenue and the 7th Street Entry Club. Prince wrote the treatment and played the lead role. The film grossed $80 million, and the album, which won Prince an Oscar for Best Soundtrack, rained hits for a year. Purple Rain, Let's Go Crazy, and When Doves Cry being the standout tracks.
In When Doves Cry, the video opens with Prince naked in a bathtub, and it's a bit of a startling image because of how feminine he looks, but at the same time he has this very masculine, sexy energy. He gets out of the bathtub and we see this kind of revealing shot of his washboard abs, and he kind of crawls across the floor in this very naked, feline way.
You and I engaged in a kiss. The sweat of your body covers me. Can you, my darling, can you picture this? Dream if you can, a courtyard, an ocean of violets and blue.
It's really interesting to watch this video because you see Prince and clips of Purple Rain where he's this rock star with this very troubled home life. You see him on stage and then you see him rushing home where his stepfather is abusing his mother and he has to kind of pull him off his mom.
She's never satisfied. Why do we scream at each other? This is what it sounds like when doves cry.
It puts Prince out there as a leading man, but it's also a very sexual way to start the video. We didn't see a lot of musicians, male musicians at this time, putting themselves out there in this way, like to start out naked in a bathtub. But that's really very much a part of the hypersexualized image that Prince was already putting out there. In the video for Let's Go Crazy, it's quintessential Prince. You've got him on stage in tight trousers and a ruffled blouse with a high neck, performing with a guitar and looking very sexual and in control. Interspersed in the video, you have scenes from Purple Rain, sex scenes with the beautiful Apollonia, showing her courtship and seduction by Prince, and also some of the scenes of his very troubled home life.
Let's go.
It's a long music video and it feels very much like an advertisement or trailer for the film.
For any other artist, Purple Rain would have been a hard act to follow, but Prince already had another album in the works, Around the World in a Day. A tour de force of psychedelic soul released in 1985, it became his second consecutive #1 album, and the first to appear on his own Paisley Park label. With Prince Mania in full effect, the album generated 2 more top 10 hits, Raspberry Beret and Pop Life. Even a bad film, Under the Cherry Moon, Prince's first real miscue, couldn't halt his momentum, as the accompanying soundtrack, Parade, included the classic Kiss, his third #1 single.
In the video for Kiss, we see Prince in this very sexy 2-piece outfit. The top almost looks like a woman's exercise midriff top, and he's wearing like black lycra leggings. It's a very feminine, androgynous look for Prince. A lot of Prince's breaking down of barriers had to do with the way that he was appearing appearing to be two genders at the same time. And in this video, we see him in a way kind of prancing around as if he's a very sexy woman in heels, bearing her midriff. But at the same time, he's very much a man who is masculine, who's sexual, and who wants a woman. So it's an interesting combination, and it's a motif that Prince would play with throughout his career, including ultimately wanting to be called a symbol that was both male and female.
Prince hit an artistic peak with Sign of the Times in 1987. Sign of the Times was Prince's most musically expansive and lyrically incisive album.
Sign of the Times was the first pop hit to make reference to AIDS, the disease of the 1980s. And he even recorded it first a year before it came out. But even after that year's wait, which nobody knew was a wait, it still was a breakthrough. That's how ahead of the times he was.
On the sobering Sign of the Times, Prince enumerated a catalog of social ills over a skeletal funk track. Other hits of the album included You Got the Look, a duet with Sheena Easton, and I Could Never Take the Place of Your Man. Around this time, Prince talked of dueling identities within himself, conjuring characters that represented his good side, Camille, and dark side, Spooky Electric. The latter had its say on the Black Album, a controversial, hardcore set that was aborted shortly before its intended release. In its place came Love Sexy, which contained the terrific Alphabet Street. Commercially, Prince found himself back on top in 1989 with his soundtrack to the first Batman movie. Prince's dense, tangled funk meshed with film producer Tim Burton's dark gothic vision and resulted in the album Batman and single Bat Dance shooting to the top of the charts.
That was so audacious when you think about it. Tim Burton, with that film, A, giving Jack Nicholson basically co-lead as the Joker, but B, just saying to Prince, give me a soundtrack. And it was fantastic. #1 single, Bat Dance.
A year later, Prince made another of his own movies, Graffiti Bridge. Although it was panned, the double album soundtrack was compelling, particularly the impassioned Thieves in the Temple. In the early 90s, Prince assembled a backing band, the New Power Generation. They debuted on Diamonds and Pearls, Prince's most accessible and hit-filled album since Purple Rain. Everything about it was elaborately conceived, including the holographic cover. The album returned Prince to radio with a string of funky, upbeat hits: Get Off, Diamond and Pearls, Money Don't Matter, Tonight, and Cream.
The video for Cream is about as sexy as you would think it would be when it comes to the name of the song and the kind of performer that Prince is. You see him dressed in his full ruffle neck blouse, in his tight pants and high heels, gyrating on the stage with very scantily clad women in kind of like bodysuits. At one point he is humping the stage, he's prancing around, and it's a very hypersexual song. The lyrics are sexual, the video is sexual, and it's a celebration really of the naughty side of Prince that people really kept coming back for.
Diamond and Pearls would turn out to be Prince's biggest album of the 90s. It was followed in 1992 by an album that marked the first appearance of the symbol that Prince would formally adopt a year later as his name. Ironically, the disc whose title was a symbol, and therefore referred to as the Love Symbol album, opened with a song called My Name is Prince. The numerology-minded 7 peaked at number 7, but Prince's most infectious funk workout, Sexy MF, proved too profane for radio. Still, Prince seemed to be on a roll. In August 1992, he signed a contract extension with Warner Brothers for 6 more albums, and he acquired the title of vice president with the label. However, by the mid-90s, relations would sour as he began appearing in public with the word slave scrawled on his face while agitating to get off the label.
In a 1999 BET Tonight interview, Prince talked about perhaps one of the most controversial things that he did was to change his name from Prince to the artist formerly known as Prince, or the artist, and he created a love symbol to represent that. And what was fascinating about what he said and controversial about what he said, was he described himself as a slave. And he makes it clear he's not talking about the kind of slavery that African Americans had to endure when they first came to America. That's not the kind of slavery he's talking about. He says, yes, he says, it's relative.
Prince was in a trap. Prince was under contract to, Prince was owned, you know. Now, I can't use Purple Rain. I can't use this song. I can't sell the song Purple Rain now unless I record it again, which I have plans to do if I can't, in fact, get the master recording that I believe is one of my children, you know. So I had to get freed from the mentality of being a slave. You understand?
Right.
Okay, and that's not to equate myself with the same situations that we suffered coming to this country, but you know, everything is relative. If you are owned, you are owned. If you can't do everything that you want to do, if there's a ceiling and you're not allowed to go as high as you can go, you are in fact a slave.
Rather tellingly, he says, if you're owned, you're owned. And if you can't do everything you want to do, then you're a slave. And that sums up both Prince's desire to control his own destiny and his obsessive compulsion to be the best possible artist that he could be, which is that kind of rare drive that only artists of the caliber of Prince and only an artist like Prince could do. That is what made him what he is.
In 1993, Prince launched an independent label, NPG Records, with the Various Artists compilation 1-800-New Funk. His next single, The Most Beautiful Girl in the World, which also appeared on NPG, marked a return to hit-making form.
Prince's video for The Most Beautiful Girl in the World is one of his most romantic videos that he made in his career. It was the first song released on the album right after he changed his name to a symbol. And it was a different kind of Prince than we were used to seeing, because this was a Prince who was very much in love. The woman who inspired the song was his then fiancée, Mayte Garcia, who he ended up marrying shortly after he shot the video on Valentine's Day. The video is all about marriage. There's a beautiful bride, and Prince is standing there looking quite regal in red, and he's singing about this woman who is the most beautiful girl in the world. You don't see Prince gyrating, humping, getting naked, other things that you see on Prince videos. This video is romantic, it's a celebration of love, and it very much reflects the state of mind that Prince was in himself when he made this song.
Could you be the most beautiful girl in the world? It's plain to see you're the reason that God made a girl.
Meanwhile, relations with Warner Brothers, to which he was still contracted, were deteriorating badly. The release of the Gold Experience was delayed while he argued with the label. Disenchanted with what he saw as an unfairly one-sided relationship between label and artist that rendered the latter a slave, Prince was let out of his contract with Warner Brothers in 1996. His last album of new music for the label was Chaos and Disorder. After being liberated from his former label, he quickly resumed his prolific ways. Distributed through a special arrangement with Arista, Rave Unto the Joy Fantastic gave Prince the best of both worlds: artistic ownership of his work and major label distribution. The album was notable for its production credit, Prince, which marked the first time he'd reverted to his old name in 6 years. In February 2004, Prince appeared with Beyoncé at the Grammy Awards, playing his own Purple Rain, Let's Go Crazy, and Baby I'm a Star, along with Beyoncé's Crazy in Love. A month later, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. During the closing ceremony, he played the song-ending solo on George Harrison's While My Guitar Gently Weeps, wowing the assembly with his ferocious virtuosity.
And they are doing While My Guitar Gently Weeps. And for the first 3 minutes or so, Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne are trading lead vocals, and it's one of those usual superstar jams. And then Prince has a minute-long guitar piece, and he tears the roof off the sucker. And there he is with all these famous people on stage, and he is stealing the show completely. And at the conclusion of his solo, he throws his guitar in the air. And in the clip, you don't see the guitar come down. But from the eye line, you see that he's just looking to make sure that his roadies caught the thing. And then he walks off stage with the gait and look of, well, I've now done what I came into this world to do, and leaves.
Together, these performances made Prince the talk of pop music again. Something similar would occur when he played the 2007 Super Bowl halftime show.
Prince's Super Bowl performance in 2007 is widely believed to be the best and greatest Super Bowl performance of all time. Critics absolutely were blown away by his stage presence and the magnificence of his performance. You have to picture the scene. It's in Miami and it is pouring rain. It's one of the only times it has poured rain at halftime in the Super Bowl in history, if not the only time.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life.
Another thing he did, which was extraordinary, was to cover other songs during the performance. Mostly when Super Bowl artists are asked to perform, they do their own music, and that's maybe they invite a guest singer to come in and do a song like we saw with Coldplay and Beyonce, but generally they do their own songs. What Prince did was to cover other songs such as Jimi Hendrix and the Foo Fighters in the midst of this incredible performance of his own hits. And everyone was incredibly excited to see Prince show up, standing outside, getting completely soaked, and yet didn't take away an ounce from the high-powered energy and sheer amazingness of his performance. I think what Prince in a very savvy way did here was to give the public what he knew they wanted, was a rip-roaring good time full of high energy and music that they loved.
From mid-2010 through the end of 2012, Prince toured throughout Europe, America, Europe again, Canada, and Australia. During 2013, he released several singles, starting with Screwdriver and continuing with Breakfast Can Wait in the summer of that year. All this activity was a prelude to the spring announcement that Prince had re-signed to Warner Bros. Records, the label he had feuded with 20 years prior. As part of the deal, he wound up receiving the ownership of his master recording, and the label planned a reissue campaign that would begin with an expanded reissue of Purple Rain, roughly timed to celebrate its 30th anniversary.
In the same way that Prince is hard to pin down when it comes to one musical genre type, Prince was very much an enigma across his entire career. He refused to be pinned down even in terms of gender. Was he male? Was he female? Was he gay? Was he straight? Was he black? Was he white? He was definitely black, but in some of his videos, he has so much face powder on, he looks completely white. His style of dressing, it's masculine, but it's super feminine. His sexuality was very much a male predator who was going to seduce a young woman, but he was also hyper feminine. Prince was an enigma in that you couldn't really put your finger on who and what he was, and that was part of his appeal.
There's a wonderful anecdote which was narrated by Prince's publicist, and they say that after a performance, he would make the band watch a video of the show they'd just performed. So they'd all sit backstage, and every time he spotted a bum note, he would berate the person who did it. That is what it meant to work for Prince. And whereas at times it could and was undoubtedly overbearing and relentless, that's just how you get better at stuff. And that's why Prince was an inspiration. You know, artists like that don't just happen overnight. They have to work at it. And that anecdote really sums up that obsessive, driven desire to just reach a pinnacle of creative achievement that no other artist had ever done. And you have to have that dynamic going on to perform as beautifully and to create as prolifically as an artist like Prince. Because there's one fact about perfectionists and narcissists, but particularly true of perfectionists, and the two are very closely linked, is that they can't ever be good enough. If you're a perfectionist, you never reach perfection. And you're always striving to do it. You want more and more and more and more. Let's just make this right. Let's just make this right. But it's never good enough. You've always got to improve. And it's that narcissism, that perfectionism, and that incredible creative drive and work ethic that goes to make a genius like Prince.
Since Prince's death, worldwide press have rhapsodied about Prince's otherworldly talents and profound impact on pop music.
Here's a person who combined elements of James Brown with Jimi Hendrix and did it at the highest level of the world, and then in the meantime was also controlling every single element of production of his music.
To sum up Prince's legacy would be about his sheer raw talent, a guy who could play every single instrument on every single track, on every album, who released 39 albums in his career and left thousands of songs in a vault in his home on his death.
I get the impression that no one need worry that they did not get the best of Prince. Because the best of Prince, it would appear to me, was not what he held back, but what he gave out. So in fact, we all got the best of Prince.
The 7 Grammys, the Golden Globe, the Academy Award, the virtuosic mastery of every instrument he encountered, the mythic persona he cultivated, the singular and revolutionary artistic vision he possessed that transcended race, culture, and sex. They're the legendary parts that composed Prince, an unparalleled force, who was taken too soon, but whose work will radiate into eternity.